Record. Okay, we are recording now. Welcome and welcome again to our Accelerator call. I am proud to tell you that our next event will be held on January 11th, so mark that down on your calendars. And we're going to be focusing on the all-important interview. Our guest speaker is Jeff Wallner, who is a former recruiter and a longtime stand-up comedian. So he blends his very unique form of satire with his recruiting experience and his stage experience to prepare candidates for with stage techniques for captivating an audience, which is really what we're doing when we're interviewing, right? We need to captivate that audience really quickly, right? It's sometimes in less than 10 minutes. So I asked Jeff to kick off 2023 with a few laughs and maybe a different perspective on the job interview. So Elsie has just put the link in if you want to register for that event for January 11th. That would be amazing. So to get excited about interviews and to kick off 2023 with some good interview karma, I'm giving away 3 seats. For 3 weeks in January, we're going to have an interview club, the Accelerator Interview Club. If you haven't interviewed in a while and you want to practice basic interviewing skills in a small group environment, this is the perfect opportunity for you. This is not going to be, I'm going to sit back and listen. This is going to be hands-on. We're going to be interviewing with each other. Okay, so if you're interested in those 3 seats, just put in the chat right now, 2023, and I will select 3 people a week to do some interviewing with me. If you are not connected with me yet on LinkedIn, I suggest you do that because the details will be going through LinkedIn. And if I'm not connected to you, it'll make it much more difficult. So if you are not yet connected to me, Elsie, if you can put my URL in there, that would be amazing. And then I will select 3 people a week to join me to practice some interviewing skills. We're gonna have fun. Okay, beautiful. All right, I see we have a lot of people. Okay, so I'm going to select, we can't have too many people in that group. So I'm going to select a couple, at least 3 a week, and we will make that happen. I'll give you dates and times as we get a little bit closer. Beautiful and perfect. Thank you. We'll have a great time. Today, I am thrilled to welcome Marc Halpert to the stage. Marc is a LinkedIn coach and trainer, and he advises professionals how to renovate their LinkedIn profiles to better explain their brand and to position why they do what they do. That's Marc's big claim to fame. Why do you do what you do, right? And I love talking about that as well. I'm going to let Marc focus on that today. Marc and I have known each other for many years. We met in a mutual networking organization, which is amazing. I don't know if anyone is familiar with Gotham, but we are both avid users of LinkedIn for sure. And we share a common love and appreciation for the power of LinkedIn. Is that correct, Marc?
I'd say you said it perfectly.
Absolutely. He is a high energy speaker and author of many books and articles. And the thing that I really resonates with me is that Marc blogs every single day.
Yep.
Every single day, every single business day, I should say, right?
That's right. 2,250 blog posts to date.
That's unbelievable. There's no way I can keep up with that. But he calls his this a LinkedIn nugget.
That's
and
cool.
I want to remind you, if you are new to the group, we always post nuggets that you learn during the time that we're together in the chat. And I ask you to put it in caps, nugget, so that we all know what nuggets are that you're learning from Marc. And then I will post those later this week for those who could not attend our call. Okay, so we like to share our information. We like to share great information, and I'm sure we're going to get a lot of great nuggets from Marc. If you have questions during the presentation, feel free to put your questions into the chat, and then I will try and aggregate the questions, and Marc will answer as many as possible towards the end of his presentation. Is everyone ready? Great. I'm going to ask you all to mute yourselves, except for Marc, of course. We need to hear him. And Marc, I'm going to ask you to to take it away.
Thank you very much. Let's put this guy up here. And let's make it bigger. And move everything out of the way. Okay, here we go. Welcome to LinkedIn Airlines. We're going to take a little trip. I want you to know that we're going to look at LinkedIn from 30,000 feet down. So I only have 40 something minutes. Normally when I teach a client, I'm teaching them for 4.5, 5, 6 hours to get their profile totally buffed up and ready to rock and roll. So I'm going to give you some real high level things to look at. And if you have any questions, again, put them in the chat. For the purposes of today, Mindy will have the PDF of the slides. She already has a PDF of the slides. She will be sending them out, excuse me, only to people who are in the group. Questions at the end. Please, the question should not be personal, like I have a situation that, because I find that that gets people very turned off. I want to be able to be sure that everybody is getting the benefit of everything for everyone in the session. So 3 big points today, 3 big nuggets, okay? Why do you do what you do? How do you say that? What makes you a shortlist candidate? How do you look, in my words, amazinger than the competitor? How do you take your past, where you got your experience, to show how you've learned and what you use that experience in your present? And how would anybody want to spend their future? By hiring you. And you tell your career story. So you're really knitting a story here together. You want the reader of your LinkedIn profile to be enticed, salivate to talk to you. And you want to be a thought leader. You have to show that you step out, you are looking at things in your field in a way that will benefit the organization you would go to. So it's gestures, it's words, it's things that you do, things that you say, but not that you say, it's how well you say it. And why do you say it? You must be top of mind. That's why I blog every single day. I want people to expect my blog. I want to be beneficial for them every morning at 8 a.m. I get people all over the world reading me, commenting back to me. That's my calling. That's why I do it. That's what you can do too, up until and even after you find that position that you're seeking right now. So let's set the stage a little bit. Don't be shy on your LinkedIn profile. You really have to tell who you really are. Get comfortable with yourself. It's amazing how people are not comfortable talking about themselves. What do you offer? You have to do an assessment. If you haven't done that, it's a good time to do it between Christmas and New Year's, or between now and the first part of the year, because you can really take a 30,000-foot view of yourself. Get close to what you would like to do next. Why should you want to do the next thing? Is this the natural path of your career, or are you changing careers? If you change careers, you have skills that are transferable. Refer to those skills as transferable skills. Make the reader know these are transferable skills that you bring with you wherever you go. And I like to say, you have skills in your back pocket, no matter where you are. If you need that skill, you pull that skill card out of your back pocket, you play it on the table, and you put it back when you're done using it. And it's a little bit better for having been used. The all-important why do you do what you do? You have to express it. It has to be really clear to the reader of your profile. Remember, they don't read much. They don't absorb much. They don't spend a lot of time with you. You have to say it as quickly as you can say it, and you have to repeat it in other places. What superpowers do you have that reinforce that why? We all have superpowers, like this guy in the picture. Yeah, you're vulnerable. We're all vulnerable, whether employed or not employed. I'm self-employed, and we self-employed people, we entrepreneurs, and if any of you are entrepreneurial, you'll know we are very vulnerable. Well, why do we like that? Why are we comfortable with that? How have we gotten our arms around that? You have to express that on LinkedIn. What makes you tick? And why do you think you can tell your why better than the next person? And it's not what you say, it's how well you say it. And who else has witnessed your superpower and can tell your why? So I can tell you all my whys. And if I tell you and I tell you and I tell you, it's like, yeah, but that's what he says. But when someone else says, hey, that guy, Mark, let me tell you how well he really does his why, because I've seen him in action. That's where recommendations, and to a lesser extent, endorsements of skills on LinkedIn come into play. And if you recognize as the reader the name of the person writing that recommendation is even more golden because it somehow has a patina to it, something to it that no one else has said yet. And you really stick to it. So I don't know if you're familiar with this book in the top right corner, Start With Why by Simon Sinek. It's a great read. It's a fast read. But if you really only have 18 minutes, which I hope you have more than that, listen to the TED Talk. And there's a YouTube of his TED Talk. You want to go past the resume, which is a very structured document. It's limited to 2 pages, and it says, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this. Remember I said earlier on, and this is where I'm going to begin to repeat to make my points, because if you didn't get it the first time, you get it the second time, the third time, you'll see it in a different way. Your past makes your present. Where you came from contributes to who you are today. And I'm doing this presentation right now from all the experience I've had in my past, wherever I've been. And I'm a big corporate guy. I was a banker. I was a finance guy. It's so far in the back of my mind, all those things. But I learned to speak and be persuasive. So I bring that to you today. And that present skill that you have takes you to your future. Why would anybody hire you to have you work with them, contribute to the organization into the future? So Simon Sinek says it in a really good way. And this graphic you see in this picture is done by an artist in Australia named Lynn Kazali. And if I ever meet her, I will hug her because she does an amazing job of taking complex books and narrowing them down to a page. And she draws the golden circle that Simon Sinek talks about. Don't tell me what. Don't tell me how. Tell me why you do what you do. Aim for the bullseye. And when you really learn to talk about your why, you've accomplished things that people stand up and recognize you for and will remember you for. I had a situation like that yesterday afternoon. I was in a networking group. New person came into the group. She immediately told her why. And my ears stood up. Wow, she's in touch with what she's all about. I want to get to know her better because she cut through the bull of the what. I didn't have to think how. She told me why she did what she did. So think about that. Your LinkedIn profile, past, present, future, pronoun I and everything that you say, and also pronouns me and mine, should speak right to the reader, as if you're speaking to the reader. So I don't know if you read my profile yet, but I'm told that, and I spent a lot of time doing it, that as you read my profile, you are hearing me speak to you. My books are that way too. A lot of people say, as I hear you speak, I remember listening to you as I read you in my mind in the book. Tell people what makes you unique in your own language. You're making a presentation to the board of directors, but you can add your personality. You're using rich sentences. You're using audio, video, color, motion. Those are memory enhancers. And if your LinkedIn profile only has words, you're missing the memory enhancement that sight and sound and color add to the reader. Tell us all the things you've been rewarded by, honors, awards, publications, skills and the endorsements of those skills, recommendations, all that. You have multiple pages, much more than a resume. I have full respect for the resume. Don't get me wrong. But my LinkedIn profile goes for about 15 pages if you print it out. That's all you need to know about me. That's my website, my personal mini website. So complement your resume with things that the resume doesn't allow you to put there. You don't have enough space. You certainly can put sight and sound and vision and color and all that. And tell the full story. Your resume plus your LinkedIn profile will tell your why if you free yourself and give yourself the freedom to tell people why you do what you do and what you learned in your past makes you who you are today and where you see yourself going in your future and how you can bring that to your next spot. So we'll talk a little bit about personal LinkedIn branding. Your brand on LinkedIn has to come full center, smack between the eyes of the reader immediately because they don't spend a whole lot of time with you. So let's talk a little bit about that. First, let's absorb the fact that we're in startup again. You're always morphing. You're always changing. If you don't know this book, I strongly recommend you get it. Read it from the library if you can get it there. I listen to it on Books on Tape now 9 times. Every time I listen to it, I get something better. Careers are not linear anymore. You never stay the same place from 18 to 65. No one gets gold watch anymore. My grandparents did, but that's when it ended. You're constantly in trial and error and amending and retrying and repurposing your profile, your career. You're never in, you're always in beta. There's no such thing as a finished career anymore. And even after you decide to retire, a lot of people go back to work in something new. There's a concept in this book called I to the power of we, and that's really like an exponent. So the number of people that I know well enough to connect to, that is the power that makes me someone that I can refer others to, and they can refer back to me to thank me along the line. Your network is your net worth. If you have a broken link in the chain, your network suffers. Carefully look at the people you're connected and be sure that these are people who can really help you. Otherwise, when you ask for help, you've got 10,000 people who don't really know you, you get nothing back. But the people who really know you, they feel committed to help you. This is a great book, strongly recommend it for emulation, experimentation, and implementation. So look at your profile and ask yourself, if I had an out-of-body experience, would I buy from the person, me, that I'm reading right now? How can you be memorable, optimal? So your LinkedIn profile takes all these color blocks and pulls them together around your skills. And I love this slide because this is getting to the core of what you need to do. And we'll talk about the cut stone in just a minute. Your experience is your resume and your experience section on LinkedIn. Your ability comes as a distillation of what you say and how well you say it. And let's remember, folks, most hiring managers right now want to know if you can write. No matter what generation you're from, they want to know if you can express complex thoughts in a simple way. How have you grown? Where'd you get some training, on or off the job? Are you competent? What knowledge do you possess that you're always adding to? And what do you want to learn? All of these things come together on your LinkedIn profile in terms of the skills you bring to the table. So go through a couple of things about my profile that really works well. Now, admittedly, I'm not a job seeker, but I think you can get some good ideas here. But everything is clear, grammatically correct, no typos, parallel formats, proper syntax, I pronoun, proper verbs, not 5th grade verbs like has, was, may, did. And the impression I give is that I'm constantly motion and moving and learning and changing and giving. And I keep tweaking it. I just made a fairly large tweak to my profile a couple of weeks ago. And I like it better, but it's still not perfect. It's still not where I want it to be. There's a couple of things that I do on my profile. This is me. I'm not leading an orchestra. I am making a point at a presentation. I planned my profile. Every section refers up and down to each other. You can get the same information. You can get new information as you read up or down. It is designed to be credible, like a novel. Somebody will never read chapter 2 unless they love chapter 1. They'll never read chapter 5 unless they liked 1 through 4. You have to plan this. You have to know where the story's going. Don't leave somebody to try to figure it out on their own. They won't do it. I wrote it all myself. Write it yourself. Tweak it all the time. It constantly needs improvement. I write as I speak. I use the active voice, pronoun I, rich verbs, as I said before. Google 185 power verbs, see what you come up with. It's great for the resume, but it's even better for LinkedIn. I show my personality and what I say. I don't only say on my LinkedIn profile about me. I let other people who've said things to me without my request tell others who read my profile, that guy Mark, he really does what he says he does. I'm active. I tell people what I do. I tell people what I'm thinking. I tell people what I'm reading. I tell people what I'm learning. Is that evolving novel idea, section by section. My career story makes sense when people want to know, where did I come from? Where am I now? Where am I going? Different themes, different ways, different sections, all using the same concepts. I have 3 businesses. If any of you have multiple businesses, it's even harder on LinkedIn to talk about more than one business. But you may want to tell people what you learn from each business and how that makes you who you are today, past, present, and future. I use quotes from other people. I use graphics. I use color. I use animation. I use audio. I use video. I use every tool that makes LinkedIn a power tool. I want to be remembered. So when someone's at a Christmas party and they say, I'm looking for a LinkedIn coach, I want my face and name to pop in their mind right away. You want that same thing. I'm looking for somebody to fill a slot in my company. Who does this? They have to remember what they read on your LinkedIn profile. And they have to see you on a continuous basis in order for it to sink into their head. I use hashtags. I tag people to get conversation. I comment. I share. Yeah, it's what I do for a living. And it's not what you do for a living. But until you've got your new position squared away, this is what you do for a living. And I curate other material that I read. I don't only pop everything I read up for other people to read. I tell them why what I'm putting there is important. And I want to be relevant. That is so important in today's noisy world. So there are 4 places to be found in the LinkedIn search. Companies can search for you, your headline. That's the 220 characters, sort of your initial elevator pitch. That's what starts the conversation going. Hard, very hard to write. Really takes a lot of tweaking and editing to get it down to 220 characters, including spaces, but make them want to know more. So they read your about section, which gives you a lot more, 10 times, more than 10 times the amount of space, but it's still got to be fascinating for other people. So it's like the lead paragraph in a newspaper article. You'll never read the rest of the article unless you love the first paragraph. And this reinforces the headlines why with your about saying why. And here you can add graphics and video and color and animation and all that great stuff. And when they like your about and they want to know where'd you come from, you get 2,000 characters for every job you've had. What did you accomplish against adversity? Where did you do something that you had a limited budget, a very short time frame, and you came in with a beautiful piece of work? Those are the things you want to talk about. Those are the things you want reflected in your LinkedIn recommendations, where other people who either managed you or worked with you alongside you say, this really happened. Marc really did a grand job with this. So by inference, you could do that wherever you go. And show the companies or the logos you worked at. Even if they don't exist anymore, they're probably on LinkedIn somewhere. And I have a lot of companies. I'm the type of person, if I'm in a company and you see me there, get out now, because most of my companies don't exist anymore. So skills, you can do 50 skills. You can show 50 skills, but don't tell me your skill is management or your skill is finance, because everybody's got that. And besides, those are just topics. Those are books on your shelf from graduate school or business school. Whatever you developed and refined, use an adjective in front of the word management or finance or whatever it is to tie it to what is applicable today. I don't just say I'm a trainer. I say I'm a trainer on LinkedIn for baby boomers. I'm a trainer on LinkedIn for lawyers. I'm a trainer on LinkedIn for underemployed people. And be honest with what you list. Use the skills that you think people will be looking for. You can search skills, folks. And manage your skills endorsements to be sure that people who endorse you really know you for those skills. So got to zoom along here. Here's my about. Don't shortchange yourself. Use as much space as you can. Use a lot of white space. Tell your why. Use I and my with power verbs. And there's actually a mistake there. It's 2,200 characters. So that's my mistake. So think this is an elevator pitch. Experience. Talk about every job you've had. There's a ladder. You climb that ladder. You earn those positions. You want the reader to visually be able to scan the logo of the company you worked for, how you progressed in title. Some people read the experience section bottom up. Some people read it top down. I've had search people and HR people tell me they do it both ways. They want to get the full breadth of your experience. Don't shortchange yourself here, but don't exaggerate. Show your personality, all within why. And you notice if you look in the first box at the top, I talk about what I do, but I let other people talk about how well I do it. So those some of those things I was talking about earlier. Here's the concept of the cut stone. All right, we talked about skills as being the cornerstone of what makes LinkedIn work for you. When you express the right skills, they'll reflect on the experience that you have in your LinkedIn profile. And these will stand out to people who have seen you finesse your craft or your profession. And they all tell why. So you want to ask your recommender, you want to manage the recommendation by saying, hey, Bob, you'll recall the time that I did this. You saw me do this. I experienced and used the skills that I refined in A, B, C, and D. Could you write a recommendation in your own words that give me and the reader the personal perspective of how well I did my why? And that becomes a facet of the cut stone. Several skills will combine together in a recommendation and become a facet. And the more facets you have on a lump of stone, the more light comes in to make your career narrative even brighter to people who are reading it. Because remember, professionals who are looking to fill a spot read these things all day, every day. You want them to stop and say, wow, I need this person, top list, top of the A list. Let's get this person in here. I always get the question, what's the right number of recommendations? So I created my own rule. You take 2% times the number of good connections you have. That's the number of recommendations you want. And it seems to work out. And it's been, well, I don't know, 10 years since I've had this, and it seems to work properly. 98% of the people you're connected to know you, but they don't know you well enough to recommend you. But it's the 2% of your connections who know you, have witnessed you, love you enough to want to commit to writing how well you do your why. And when they write their words into the record of your LinkedIn profile, it's there until you decide you want to change it. So names are memorable. If somebody gives you a recommendation and they're a top name in your field, anybody hiring in your field will say, wow, there's a recommendation from that person. That's important. Then they really pay attention. Well-written recommendations are really golden. Good golden writers of recommendations are equally golden. So you don't have to have exactly 2%, but I wouldn't go to 5%. I wouldn't go to 1%. Try 2. Ask for new recommendations. If you're in a position right now, you're looking to get more cut facets to your stone, recommendations do that. But go for quality of recommendations over quantity. Be sure your recommendations are current. Don't make somebody look and say, I wonder why he doesn't have a recommendation since 2017. What did he do for 5 years? That's an immediate turnoff, whether or not you know it. Good recommendations complement your experience. They complement your skills. You want to manage your recommendations to have the best impressions. If you receive a recommendation from somebody and you think Jonathan could write a better recommendation than that because you've worked with Jonathan, feel free to send it back to Jonathan and say, Jonathan, I'd like you to expand a little bit beyond what you said if you wouldn't mind, because remember, he's a 2%. He loves you enough to help you any way he can. If there's a typo, send it back. If they spell your name wrong, send it back because they don't know you well enough. You look funny that way. and delete the older ones as needed, or ask the older ones to reissue the recommendations if you've worked with them again. And don't forget, you're not just here to collect recommendations, you're also here to give them. And there's no better good deed you can do than to give somebody a recommendation they're not expecting, because they will remember you forever. Ask them, George, I appreciate your being open to recommending me on LinkedIn, because it was his suggestion and I love that. I try to have each recommender touch on one trait of my business capabilities. In your recommendation, I'd like you to focus on this, that, or the other. How long we've known each other, such as stories that you can tell or anecdotes you can relate. So I'm giving him the bare bones, the outline of what I'd like him to do. Don't you think he's going to come back with a much better recommendation for me than I say, George, would you write me a recommendation, please? Thank you, Mark. So ask, give them what you're looking for. You're doing them a favor because they don't know what to write unless you ask for it. And when you publish it, thank them. Don't forget to thank them. Can't tell you how many recommendations I've written for people and they forget to thank me. And I wonder, in a hollow world, why we feel hollow. Skills and endorsements. Seth Godin said it so well. If you can learn to be better at something, it's a skill. I'll go one better than Seth Godin. Name that skill using an adjective in front of it. So you're not just saying management. You're not just saying finance. You're not just saying training. Look at other people in your field and see what skills they're using. Look at other people in this room and see what skills they're using, and riff off of those skills to what skills you think you should be expressing. And my friend Kasten out in Portland, Oregon, she's a career advisor. She had this, it was just a couple of days ago, and I said, Kasten, I got to use this in my presentation. Is that okay? She said, absolutely. If you're changing industries, jobs, or career, it's easy to focus on skills you've acquired rather than the specific job you did. So what do? Take a piece of paper and draw a line down the middle. On the left-hand side, write down the things you accomplished at that job. And on the right side, write the skills that you used or demonstrated to accomplish those things. And that's a really great way. Another thing I tell my clients is, for about a week, have a little bit of an out-of-body experience and listen to yourself speaking to people on the phone or as you're typing an email in your day-to-day work of what you're doing, and try to glean out the skills that you are demonstrating as you're demonstrating them. Make a list of those skills. Tweak those skills. Make them yours. So get traction on your LinkedIn posts. Don't forget to post. Provide your insight. Be authentic. Be relevant. You can use about 5 hashtags these days. Hashtags are really valuable. You can tag people. I don't think it's a good idea to tag people unless you really know them very, very well, or unless you have their permission to tag them. But you can freely tag companies without a problem, because people following those companies will see that you're actually mentioning those companies, but always on the up and up, always in a positive vein, professionally. And if you get comments on your posts, don't forget to respond. Hopefully within 12 hours, I would say right away. And I do that, make that my business to do that all the time. You get brownie points for that in people's minds. Wow, you really do have your act in gear. Search for other people. Search for people in companies that will be helpful to you. Maybe not on the company they're working in, but maybe they have a colleague who's in another company that might know something that you need to know. Somebody you need to know. You only ask them to join your network if you know them well, or you've experienced that really wonderful, warm feeling where you make a connection with somebody, a mental connection, not a LinkedIn connection, because LinkedIn connections are free and I can teach a monkey to connect to people all day long. I want you to do the human thing. Be strategic and professional. And if they don't connect back to you, don't badger them. Especially at holiday time, they're busy, you're busy, everybody's busy. But you can come back to them in a different way and be creative in how you come back. Well, maybe you didn't see something, but this article came across my desk. I thought you'd be interested in it. By the way, we have an outstanding LinkedIn connection request. Could you please take a look at it and see if you can help me, because I need help from people in your type of position. Search for groups of people. Search for companies. Search for schools or keywords. Schools are huge because you all went to the same school, your alma mater, you experienced the same great experience, and people in your fellow alum group want to help you. You search by name, by title. I mean, there's so many ways to search right now. Find common threads to partner along and use those threads to knit a tapestry so people will want to refer you. Make them interested in you. Show them the color and the light you bring. Look for old connections, people you used to work with. They love to hear back from you. I just got heard back from a guy I haven't seen since 1976. And we fell right back to where we were. And I'm helping his wife find a position right now. It's a very interesting position she's looking for. Look from your connections. If you see somebody in your connections list of connections, ask them, how do I get a hold of? Would you introduce me to? Is there anything in particular I should mention to that person that might just make them want to bite? They're happy to help you. So I'll show you a couple of ways to connect. First level, second level. So first way of connecting is do it the right way. So after I hung up from Noah, I immediately had a connection request to Noah. And I referenced where I knew him, because he may not read it today, he may not read it this week, he may not read it this month. Great conversation today, and I hope we have more. Upside, please join my amazing group of professional connections on LinkedIn. I did all the hard work in the phone conversation. Greg, great meeting you, comparing how we're interconnected. Same thing. Anastasia, I enjoyed meeting you today at Casual Cocktails. That was at Gotham, by the way. Hope to see you soon around Gotham. Please join my amazing, I always end it with, please join my amazing group of professional connections on LinkedIn. And sometimes when people really love the word amazinger, I'll use that. Please join my amazinger group of professional connections, because they're getting involved in a group that's truly amazing, because I have culled and cultivated my connection group. Here's how you can take two people who don't know each other with yourself in the middle. And basically you're creating a message on LinkedIn and you're using the names of the people you're connecting. Deirdre meet Rhonda, Rhonda meet Deirdre. This is how I met Rhonda. This is how I knew Deirdre. Rhonda, Deirdre does this. Deirdre, Rhonda does that. Here's the common ground where you guys need to be together. So someone kick off and let me hear great things from this. And here's their LinkedIn URLs. And let me know what's going on, guys. And they do. And they did. And they're doing business now. That's a great feeling for me. So anytime you can pull people together around you, you're adding value to your network. You will be remembered for that forever. Go back to your profile often. Look for typos. Look for substandard grammar. Look for weak verbs, syntax errors, mixed formats. If you start out saying I and you use bullet points in your section, use bullet points throughout that section and every section after that. First impressions, and if you're in a career where attention to detail counts, they're looking for attention to detail about how you show your LinkedIn profile. The other thing I'll say here is that there's a wonderful tool on Microsoft Word. It's called Read Aloud. Here's a nugget, folks, and I've talked about this on my blog. Read aloud. Let Microsoft Word read back to you your renovated LinkedIn profile section that you wrote in Word, and listen for things that sound weird, because your eye won't pick them up, but your ear will. Fix them and let it read it back to you again until you love it. So here's a wonderful quote as I begin to wrap up here. And I just found this. MIT professor Winston quoted in the Inc. magazine last May, although I just found the article. There's the link to it. You'll get it in the URL, in the PDF. Your success in your career search will be determined largely by your ability to speak to the reader, write well to the reader, and the quality, relevance, importance of your ideas in that order. 1, 2, and 3. So when they see your profile, they stick their hands in the air and their eyes bug out of their head and they say, I've got a great candidate. Let's bring that person in. So summing up here a little bit, I hope I've been able to give you a little bit of a different focus than you may have heard about on LinkedIn before. I have the 12, 13 years of coaching people in my experience. You were always in beta. Back to the book, The Startup of You, you're never a completed product, no matter what. This is just the beginning of your storytelling and the why you with your war stories that makes you an invaluable candidate to be considered and amazinger than the next person before you or after you who comes to interview. And I don't care how old you are. I don't care how many years you have in your experience, but it's your vision they're looking for. This is why you should be sought. So tell why you do what you do and encourage the reader to read the recommendations that say how well you do that why. Why are you amazinger? So LinkedIn Airlines is about to land. Reflect on the things that you learned up at 30,000 feet with me as you disembark. Take what I've told you and start playing with it. You can't mess it up. Don't be afraid of talking about yourself. If you get stuck or you have a question, I welcome your questions. I will say that I don't connect to people I haven't met and done business with. That's my choice. I'm not in a position to look for a job, so that's my own personal standard. But if you'd like to shoot me an email or you'd like to send me a message on LinkedIn with a specific issue, I'll be happy to give you a quick answer. This is what I do. This is where you can find me on LinkedIn, on my website, and I'm part of a group called Pick My Brain. That's the third QR code you see there. I do 3 things in LinkedIn. I coach individuals one-on-one. I train in groups in all different areas. And I do product management, product strategy for all sorts of crazy things that come across my desk, which makes it even more fun. So Mindy has the PDF of the slides. I'm going to send it back to Mindy or to her trusty helpers to see what questions I can answer. Hey, less than 50 minutes. I promised you, right?
You did great, Mark. Thank you so much. This is great. And I have so many nuggets, and I see the chat box lighting up with all of the nuggets. I want to
just 76. That's incredible.
I want to thank you for all of your beautiful viewpoints today. And I also want to thank you for introducing me to one of our future speakers. And Mark was talking about how we should be connecting people to each other that you think would be interesting for them. It's what we do. It's what I do. I love to connect people to each other, and Mark is of the same belief. And so he recently connected me to someone, and he may be a future speaker on the Accelerator. So amazing. A few points I want to hit before I get to a couple of questions, Mark. There's not too many, so we're good with our time. When you mentioned go to your old connections, just a really quick story. When I first started working on LinkedIn, that was right after I got laid off, which is almost 10 years ago now. I had very, very few connections, maybe 120 or something like that, because I never focused on LinkedIn. I was head of human resources. And so every person that I spoke to was part of my company, and every person I helped was part of my company. And so I had no need to reach outside my company. But once I got laid off and I realized I needed to do something else, I made a commitment to get to that 500 number, because I always wanted to see the 500 plus on my profile. And I went back into, if you remember the old Rolodex, I went back to my old Rolodex, and I started connecting with people I had worked with earlier, people that really old connections. And that's how I built it up. I built it up to the 500 number within the first 6 months. So yes, going back to people that you know, people that you went to school with, people that you used to work with, that's how you start building up your connections.
The beauty of that is that those are the people who've seen you in action. So they can attest to the fact that you are quality. It's not the people knock on your door and say, hi, I'd like to connect with you. Who are you? Really? What can I do for you? So some of them I'll go back to and say, how can I help you? And if they even answer, it's a miracle. And if they don't answer in 48 hours, it's not meant to be. So I move on. But I like to think about connectivity as people knocking on the door, front door of your house. You don't just let anybody in. You ask them what they want. What are you looking for that I can help you with? It's all about helping, because we help each other. We just don't help one way. And it's that pay it forward thing. If you haven't seen the movie, see it again, because look at it from the point of view of social media and job performance. It's absolutely amazing. You'll see it a whole different way.
Okay, so let's get to some questions. We have a few minutes left. One of the questions that was going back and forth in the chat was, how do you get a recommendation from someone who's not on LinkedIn?
You can't. Answer, end that. That's cut it out there, right? Hey, look, if they're not on LinkedIn, they're not going to recommend you on LinkedIn, okay? You should get a recommendation from somebody who's not on LinkedIn by sending them an email and tell them that I'd like to include your comments in this, your return email to me in my LinkedIn profile. May I quote you, or if not, may I at least include your comments? And don't go, don't do like several paragraphs on your LinkedIn profile from that old boss, because no one's going to read it anyway. One liner, pick the best couple of lines out of that recommendation. If they're not on LinkedIn, folks, if you're not on LinkedIn, you don't exist in today's world, all right? 875 million people are on LinkedIn. What's wrong with you if you're not on LinkedIn? I don't get that. So, some people have retired. I get it. They don't want to be on LinkedIn. It's a nuisance for them. Ask them for an email with a recommendation for you, and then ask them for permission to use it elsewhere.
Exactly. And I do that. As a matter of fact, I have some recommendations in my about section, which you also recommended, because frankly, those recommendations are all the way in the bottom of our profiles. And so I put some, they happen to be from LinkedIn, but you could theoretically put those recommendations right into your about and say, this person, recommended me, and hear what this person said about me. So that's one way to do that. The other question was, what do you consider as a current recommendation? I have seen people with, the last recommendation was in 2004. That's not current.
Pitiful. All
So
right. That's
what do you consider current?
I would say that you should have a good 3, 4, 5 for this year or last year at least. Okay. Because people, now remember, your recommendations stack up, newest one on top. So they're going to see if you have one from 2004, that's your newest one. Where you been for 18 years, right? That's just wrong. So even if they're old recommendations, you can go back and ask the recommender to revise it, and it'll pop it up to the top again. So that's a good little tip, but ask them to add more. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm going to coffee this afternoon with my boss from 1979 to 82, but he's followed my career all along. So his knowledge of me has not just been from 79 to 82. So he can write other more functional things that I've done rather than strategic and rather than experiential things that I did when I worked for him. But these are every situation is different. Be sure that the recommendations are part of the facets of your stone. That's all I can say to you. I have found no other metaphor, and people really get it, because when you look at a cut stone, that's what makes it sparkle. It's how much light comes into it. Add that light. I said that before. I'll say it again.
I like that term, facets. Just to be clear for people who are listening, if you wanted to take an old recommendation and ask them to revise it, you do it through the recommendation link and ask them to edit it?
Yeah, and if you don't know where to do it, go into the LinkedIn Help It and ask it how to revise a recommendation. It'll give you step by step by step. Help Center is your friend. They do a lot of things badly on LinkedIn. I will tell you that, because I don't work for them. I can say anything I want about them. They do one thing really, really well. The Help Center is brilliant.
Okay, that may be a nugget.
Another nugget.
Okay, so the Help Center is brilliant. Here's another question. Is there a list of skills on LinkedIn where you can select the skills that are appropriate for yourself? Is there anywhere listed a full list of skills?
When you start adding skills, start typing into the box. If you type the word management, you get a drop down of every skill that is commonly used with the word management in it. That doesn't mean you have to use that. If you want to riff off of one of those, make it yours. So you know which skills you have, but keep in mind that people who are searching for you for that skill need to be using that exact list of words to find you for that skill. It's a dirty search on the search engine a lot. So you want to be sure that you have that really specific skill, and maybe you have something similar to it elsewhere in your skills that they might be looking for. But be sure that it's understandable. Don't make the mistake of going for the general, because the generalized skills, everybody's got that, so you don't stand out.
Excellent. In a search, does it matter how high up the skills are in the listing? So the skills will only show the first three, the top three, and then there's 47 below that. Does it matter when job, I guess, recruiter is searching for us, where it is in that number 50? Is it, if it's does number 50 show up as quickly as number 1?
That's an old I guess fallacy, or an old ism. It used to be the top 3 skills were the ones that were most searchable. That changed several months ago. Now you'll notice that every skill allows you to assign a job in which you use that skill or perfected that skill. So the top 3 skills are gone. They snuck that in one evening. We were amazed. Nonetheless, they do that. But really just think about from the search perspective. Most intelligent people are not using the search just to search for everybody who do international financial management. They're going to want to know everybody who's international financial management, who worked in such and such an industry, who went to such and such a school, who live in the greater New York metro area. I'm just making this stuff up as I go along. They're going to do a multivariate search, but the skill that they're looking for is going to be involved in that multivariate search, if they're smart.
Okay. All right. This may be our last question because we're coming up on the hour, but it just popped up, and I guess this is just getting your point of view. We've been seeing lots of human interest stories on LinkedIn. What's your feeling about these stories, that they're important? Do you believe that they belong on LinkedIn, or do you believe that LinkedIn should be more of a business professional environment? Or do you feel like these stories just tell the human side of that person, like another facet of that person?
I answered this question in another presentation, and I was told I was hard-hearted. So I'm going to say this the nicest way I can. If your child is sick with cancer, I don't necessarily need to know that on LinkedIn. In my opinion, it belongs on Facebook or elsewhere. However, if that is keeping you from your job, or if you have learned some powerful lesson from watching your child come back from fighting cancer, that's how I would prefer people write that piece on LinkedIn. I know it sounds awful, but you know what? One day, this is a couple of weeks ago, I had about 8 of them. My dog died, my child is sick, my mother, I mean, seriously, these really happen. And I got to the point, I was like, oh my God, this is horrible. Yeah, the world's tough, but this doesn't belong here. All right, maybe you think I'm horrible. I don't know, but I'm trying to be professional here. We don't have a lot of time to read other stuff. It's hard enough to get people to read professional stuff, in my opinion.
Okay.
Thank you, Joan. I am not horrible. I appreciate that very much.
Okay. I think we all have a different perspective, right, of how much is too much. And I see some human interest stories that are right on point and definitely make a point.
One quick tangent on that. Please do not use the shiny penny routine on LinkedIn. When polls came out, everybody did a poll, and they kept doing them, and every poll looked like all the other polls. Your poll will get lost amongst all the other polls because everybody else is polling. Don't do the newest thing on LinkedIn. Let it sort of mellow and filter out, and then if you have a good use for a poll, ask your poll. And that goes for everything else. There are 88 changes on LinkedIn in 2022. Count on 100 and something changes in 2023. There are a lot of things going on right now because Twitter seems to be going away and LinkedIn is getting Twitter-ish if they're not Facebook-y enough. So there will be a lot of things. There are good stuff coming. There's stuff that's not so good that's coming. Just don't use everything that's available to you unless it's appropriate for the purpose.
This has been amazing. I thank you all for joining us today. If you are interested in the PowerPoint, just drop me a note on LinkedIn. If you're not connected with me yet, please do so. And I look forward to seeing you all in January. We are hopeful that the end of this year is amazing and wonderful for all of you. Marc, again, thank you so much to
Thank
you
you.
for your wisdom. Thank you to everyone who joined us today. And guess what? If you're on this call today, you're doing one more thing than your competition out there. So kudos to you. And I hope that you all have a job by the end of this year. If not, join us January 11th for our next call, and have a wonderful holiday season. Love you all.
Thank you, Mindy. Thanks, everybody. Bye.